Jan Hutchins here with Roland Ball and Snake Bloomstrand. We're going to be talking about topics that are going to be surprises to some of us as we talk here today. And so, Roland, you had an idea of what we could talk about. So please, from Barcelona, tell us what's up.
Right. Yeah, something that came up for me this week. It's been coming up recurringly, and I've written about it, the process of overcoming, as I call it. And it'll be interesting because you say you want to play the devil's advocate, so let's see how that rolls. But it's something that I see with clients, patients often, is that there's a lot of effort to improve their situation, their health situation, both mentally and physically. And I can see from some point of view, it can be constructive because it gives motivation to actually work on themselves. But often I also see that there's too much efforting involved, that they don't actually look at the problem and are too occupied with the solution. And I'm talking now in the third person of our clients, but I think all of us do that we tend to externalize and look for the solution rather than really face with the issues at hand. And that furthers conflict, furthers friction. So yeah, I'd like to explore that a little bit more with you and see what your take on it is. I mean, I can rattle on a little bit more, but
that's a good enough setup for me. Snake, you with it?
I am.
Do you have a piece to say into it already?
Well, the question that comes up right away is there an outcome you're looking for? Not out of the discussion, but out of the pondering the issue.
Right. And that's kind of where when you first presented this idea, Roland, I went, oh, that's cool, because I think of it as the next level under. I get that I do not want to be in separating myself from a place and having that seeking distance. I do want to have an actual experience of the moment. And for me, the actual experience of the moment is embodied. So as soon as you said, I want to have this overcoming, I went, no, I want to become over in myself. So I changed my posture and my breath, and suddenly I'm not conceiving of a different state, I'm experiencing a different state.
Right.
So it feels like, yes, I am overcoming, but it's not I'm overcoming. Overcoming is alive in me.
Right. I guess that's a juggle of words at the moment. That's just a different perspective of looking at it.
I'm always cautious with the big words too, because overcoming, for instance, for me is a very loaded word that involves a certain amount of, I don't know, competitive spirit or powering over in some way or another.
Totally.
And in the topic that we're talking about, particularly emotionally, sometimes for me it's enduring. Sometimes for me it is overcoming, but it's overcoming my own resistance. Part of what I find fascinating right now is knowing myself well enough to overcome some of the behaviors that don't serve me or serve those around me. And so in that very narrow definition, I'm right there with you. And there's opportunity. I get the query. There's something deeper in here. It's like I thought I could train myself into being a decent human being. Turned out I had to subject myself to it and observe and listen to my authentic reactions in order to feel a level of comfort within myself and make wise decisions that did.
I mean, what comes to mind is how we've internalized that external process of overcoming that. When you have a physical problem at hand or a task at hand, it's good to have an intention to get there, to arrive there. But as you said, emotionally, it doesn't seem to work that way, that when we apply ourselves in that way of, I'm angry, but I don't want to be angry, so I'm going to strive towards not being angry, which is kind of self-defeating in a sense. And as you pointed out as well, it's more of, what is that state of listening or of observing that puts me into touch with what is that anger all about? What is it related to? What's the feeling of it? How can I go into it? Which is a totally different approach than overcoming. And I'm I mean, I brought up this topic because I see it so often in how people talk about overcoming obstacles or growing and more self-aware. And I think just the wording itself already is, yeah, it's not the right words to use.
It isn't, it isn't, because there is a certain discipline in learning, growing, enduring, that does require the courage and the resolve to overpower yourself, overpower the situation. Sometimes that is required, and it's
Right.
a simple word.
Interesting.
So there's a friend who describes it as there are no problems, only terrain. Only terrain.
Terrain.
Wow.
And I like the shift in the time understanding of the thing. If I say there's a problem or I need to deal with my anger, it's in a very static sort of illusion. This is a path that goes across time and is always shifting and requires a notion that this is not something that is going to ever be done. There's a riding of something that needs to be happening here. And for me, I keep returning it to inside, because if I change my posture right now, if I say to either of you men, sit like a chief or stand like a chief, stuff changes. And I can take on a position that gives me a feeling that is a feeling I want to live with. I like this feeling. I want to hold this feeling and be this. I want to be this feeling into the world. I have a lot more control when I do that and do my yogic understandings about who I am and how I over or don't come. And the other piece that strikes me about this is I pulled the death card in the tarot today. And there's a part in the particular interpretation I like that says, all of our chaos and confusion comes from the individual person being unable to deal with pain. Because how and why do I go unconscious? Something hits a place that causes me pain. I shut down and defend and do my little wrapping around my ego. And next thing you know, I'm creating ripples into the world I don't like. If I can handle pain and stay relaxed in the midst of it, and again, this is this internal dance I'm trying to do, everything calms up immediately. Immediately, everything calms down.
I like the metaphor of terrain, especially with the word overcoming, because when you speak of it in the terms using the metaphor of terrain, overcoming a tall mountain isn't a hostile act. It gives a whole different characteristic. A good example came to mind. I do a lot of work with military, particularly special forces. And a Green Beret sat down with me after doing some work. And he'd been involved for a month or so in terms of looking within for the first time in his life. He's 40 years old. He looked at me and he said, you know, I'm master of the outer terrain. This man's had 6, 7, 8 deployments, experienced soldier. And he says, now you tell me there's a whole inner terrain that I know nothing about? Now, that is that terrain, that landscape, that a lifetime, hopefully you're able to overcome some of the hills and boulders on that one and learn something in the process too. But there is an outer terrain and an inner terrain. That's my point.
I think that's a beautiful place for us to end this one and do another one. Bless you, men. I really enjoyed this conversation, and I'm thinking anybody who joined us also did.